Dear friends, thank you very much for organizing this particularly important session and for giving me this opportunity. Now, a quick self-intro. My name is Vincent Xavier Palathingal. I have my bachelor's degree in civil engineering from Calicut University in Kerala. I came to US in 1992 to do my master's in civil engineering at University of Nevada, Reno. I came with my wife and we had a kid in the first year of life in the US. Just like many of you listening today, we fell in love with this country and decided to stay back. We became permanent residents in 1997 and eventually US citizens in 2003. I would like to take this opportunity to explain the context for me walking away from being a Democrat voter to a passionate Republican Party operative at the state level. I believe that my conservative upbringing in schools in Kerala obviously contributed to my values and worldview. Plus, growing up in Kerala, the first major province in the world where communists came to power through elections, I have seen how centrally planned socialist economies failed the common man by limiting opportunities and promoting big government dependencies. I was never a fan of the distribution of wealth philosophy, even in my rebellious teen years, even when I am from a very middle class family. However, I did not have any exposure to the alternatives until I came to US. As a student in India, I was instrumental in organizing students against communists who dominated the campus through violent and terror tactics. I also witnessed how minority and religious appeasement and pandering policies of various socialist parties in India was a disaster for the majority and minorities alike. Upon arrival in the US as a master's student, I was excited to experience the free market capitalist economy, where rule of law and the protection of property rights are foundations for freedom, justice, and security. I was incredibly happy with my new country and immensely proud to become a citizen in 2003. I was always a conservative and I was ready to vote for a party based on my values. However, I hated every aspect of the Iraq war as I was certain Saddam Hussein did not contribute to 9/11 and even more certain that he had no weapons of mass destruction. I was convinced that Colin Powell was doing the dirty job for the Bush and Cheney when he went to UN lying and pleading the case for a second war with Iraq. With that mindset in 2004, I was not able to even think of voting for Bush. I did not know enough about the parties at the time. My vote in 2004 was an anti-Bush vote and an anti-unnecessary war vote. Though I loved this country very much, I had noticed race-related strife that erupts in our cities occasionally. Plus, I always had a soft corner for African Americans as a race and was seriously concerned about the situation in inner city neighborhoods. That is something I really wanted to get better. I always remembered our African American brothers and sisters with a deep sense of gratitude. Their forefathers were a massive part of building this nation, much bigger than they were ever given credit for. We, the immigrants today, are extraordinarily successful in this country, but we were able to build our successes here because the parents and grandparents of African Americans made our paths and kept it all ready for us when we came. They toiled on this soil, they shed blood, they gave lives, they suffered big time, but they endured. And they opened up the gates for all of us to come and enjoy the fruits of their suffering. I always felt outright irresponsible and ungrateful to enjoy our American dream when some children and grandchildren of those prepared the way for us made our path straight are still suffering prejudices and injustices. When a good number of them are still trapped in the vicious cycle of dependency created and maintained by unscrupulous politicians who just care about their votes and being in power. So when it came to 2008, here comes the messiah of hope and change, Mr. Obama. I supported him wholeheartedly, hoping that he will help to bring the debate back to the underlying issues that needs to be addressed. I opened my home for his volunteers and personally knocked on hundreds of doors on his behalf. However, he chose to contribute to the liberal charade of racial pandering and appeasement that can never solve a thing. Plus, I noticed that his policies of distribution of wealth and red tape, the business environment with ridiculous regulations, was the same communist socialist principles in Kerala and India that I ran away from. I also noticed the indoctrination that was happening in our public schools. That is when I started learning more about the political parties and underlying philosophies. When you understand the root cause of the issue, you know then what happens to a pragmatic person with common sense. That is exactly the same thing that happened to me as well. I became a Republican. I fell in love with the concept of God-given liberties and personal responsibility being the major planks for a political party. Those were the same values that my parents raised me with. What I did not have before was the knowledge that a political party can have such simple concepts that are so dear to common people as a political platform. I have been an active member of Fairfax County Republican Party since then and currently serve as the Vice Chair for Community Relations. I ran for Fairfax County School Board last November as a Republican endorsed candidate. Though we were not able to win in the blue wave of 2019 in this deep dark blue district, I was phenomenally successful in running a spirited campaign that brought record Republican voter turnout. I ran on issues and was successful in bringing the issues that matter to the forefront. Later, I won a seat on the Republican Party of Virginia State Central Committee from the 8th Congressional District in Virginia. I won the election with an overwhelming majority in an electorate of delegates which was almost all white and against 3 white opponents. I just want to mention that to my fellow Indian Americans who may have an impression that Republican Party is racist and against minorities. No, we are not. I have been an ardent Trump supporter since early 2016. I campaigned for him tirelessly because I strongly believe that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for America to correct the mistakes committed by many past administrations. As a proud founder of multiple small businesses, I have personally experienced the damage the Obama administration has done by unleashing a flood of new regulations on businesses. I clearly understood the need for getting government out of the way for ordinary people and their businesses so that they can continue creating jobs and keep our economy working for all Americans. I have converted many minds in the process as well. Being the straight shooter the President Trump is, I had no doubt that Trump will tilt the American interest in favor of India against terrorists harboring Pakistan and against the totalitarian communists in China. And that's exactly what he did in 3 years, as you all have witnessed. Now, just few words about us, the immigrants. Before I get into the subject matter that is assigned to me, whether we know it or not, we conduct our personal lives in a very conservative manner. We raise our children in a very conservative way. We push them to work hard and we demand excellence in everything they do. We manage our personal finances quite conservatively and we run our businesses conservatively and we subscribe to capitalism and we love profits. All too often, our religious beliefs are also conservative as well. So, Our socially and fiscally conservative lifestyle is what it makes us, the Indian Americans, the most successful, the highest income earning ethnic minority in this country. How is it that in every facet of our life, we subscribe to conservative values, but when it comes to voting in elections, we vote for candidates who are diametrically opposed to what we believe in? If this is not an irony, then you tell me how 85% of Indian Americans can vote for Hillary Clinton in 2016. There is an element of hypocrisy and virtue signaling there for sure. However, the biggest factor is that for many of us, we do not know any Republicans firsthand, and we tend to believe the media narrative about the Republicans and brand them all as racist and anti-immigrant. Most immigrants, including Indian Americans, as a population that was systematically trained to think of white people as oppressors due to European colonial rule that we all had to endure. With that context, when media portrays Republicans as the white people's party, we immediately fall for it without doing much of an analysis or reasoning. That is exactly why it becomes even more important for us to have programs like this, where we can learn together and become smarter about our political beliefs and actions. Now, let us get into the thick of some technical talk about Democrat socialists and conservative Republicans to understand why they do what they do and why Indian Americans vote the way they vote. Liberalism is used differently in different countries. One of the greatest contrasts is between the definition of that word in the United States and in Europe. In Europe, liberalism usually means classical liberalism, which is a commitment to limited government, laissez-faire economics, and unalienable personal liberties. This philosophy in the American context is called libertarianism. In America, liberalism means the exact opposite of this, and the political name of that is called democratic socialism. It believes in collectivism, this is same as communism, than individual rights and personal responsibilities as the foundation of a society. It believes that heavy governmental involvement is the way to run a society. The political manifestation of that belief system is called the Democratic Party. When I was in my teen ages in Kerala and started reading social and political material, I hated the dominant and violent communists there. I never believed socialism is practical anywhere in the world. However, I was never exposed to anything other than socialism. Congress Party, Marxists, the Janata Party all embraced socialism. Even Indian Constitution has socialism in it. Was this the case during the entire history of independent India? Absolutely not. We had a vastly different political ideology named Swatantra Party that was founded by Sri Rajagopalachari. How many of you know anything deeper about that party's history in India? If you are less than 60 years of age, probably only a very few of you will have any such knowledge. Swatantra Party was a very live and kicking political party that embraced classical liberalism or libertarianism, the same belief system that is the fundamental and underlying philosophy of Republican Party in USA. What happened to Swatantra Party in India? It was systematically killed by 17 years of Nehru rule, followed by 15 years of Indira rule. So as first generation Indian Americans, we never had an opportunity to be exposed to anything like Republican Party back home. That is another reason why we look to government for solutions by default for any problems that we may face. It do not matter whether it is regular trash collection from your home, your phone connection, your car manufacturing, your electricity and water connection. Our default thinking is government is responsible for all of that. It takes a while for us to come to terms with the fact that all these things in America are provided by private companies. When Modi gives contracts to make fighter jets to Rafael, in France, instead of government entity, HAL, it is a big issue because we are trained to believe only government can do such big things. Now, coming back to USA, the Federalist Party was the first political party in the United States. Under Alexander Hamilton, it dominated the national government from 1789 to 1801, just over 10 years. The Federalists called for strong national central government that promoted economic growth. Thomas Jefferson's Democratic Republican Party was the opposition. It believed in more decentralization of power to the states. Current Democratic Party officials often trace its origins to the inspiration of the Democratic Republican Party founded by Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and other influential opponents of the Federalists in 1792. The Republican Party, or the Grand Old Party, GOP, emerged in 1854 to combat the expansion of slavery into American territories. The Republican Party those days primarily consisted of Northern evangelical Protestants, businessmen, professionals, factory workers, prosperous farmers, and former black slaves. The GOP was pro-business and it supported private banks, the gold standard, railroads, and high tariffs. The party opposed to the expansion of slavery and led the fight to destroy Confederacy. Elected Abraham Lincoln, the first Republican president in 1860, fought and won the Civil War from 1861 to 1865 and saved the Union. The Republican Party still today supports a pro-business platform with foundation in economic libertarianism and fiscal and social conservatism. Republican philosophy leans more towards individual rights and personal responsibility. In contrast, Democrats attach greater importance to equality and social or community responsibility. While there may be several differences in opinion between individual Democrats and Republicans on issues, the statement I just made is a generalization of their respective stance on several of these issues. And once Democrats had embraced the democratic socialism of Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, and Beto O'Rourke, kind of hardcore socialists now, any of these traditional differentiations is not going to be true anymore. Now they go to the extreme of socialism, and that is why we are now forced to think about other collective socialist philosophies we have seen in action. Under a total democratic control, with the weakest link like President Biden at the helm, and with the agenda of defunding the police, Green New Deal, and confiscation of guns, we really don't know where Democrats will take us. Failed Soviet model, totalitarianism in China, or socialism in Venezuela, Nehruvian socialism in India, we really do not know. No matter what it is, we already know it does not work. And so it looks like for regular people with common sense, there is no other option other than Republican Party at this point. Due to such irreconcilable differences, it is absolute nonsense if Indian Americans support any candidate or platform just looking at the skin color. I too have supported Indian American candidates across party lines in the past, just because they are Indian. Unfortunately, if you look at all of the 5 current Indian American members in the US Congress, they are diametrically opposite to Indian American interests here in the US as well as India's interests there in Asia. We cannot vote anymore based on skin color, ethnicity, or religion. It does not matter if Biden picks Kamala Harris as his running mate. Our self-interest should drive our politics, period. Now, let us examine the differences between the policies and political positions of the Democratic and Republican parties on some of the major issues that we face today. Say, take role of government. One of the fundamental differences between Democratic and Republican ideals is about the role of government. Democrats tend to favor a more active role for government in society and believe that such involvement can improve the quality of people's lives and help achieve the larger goals of opportunity and equality. On the other hand, Republicans tend to favor a small government, both in terms of the number of people employed by the government and in terms of the roles and responsibilities the government in society. They see big government as wasteful and an obstacle to getting things done. Republican approach is a free market rather than the government influencing through regulation the winners and losers. Government can only make sure quality in opportunity but not the outcome. Picking winners and losers is not government's business, and that is why we must keep them small and starved, else they will start over-regulating. Starting a business itself is a risky business, and so government in no way should add more burdens to businesses, especially small businesses. The Democrats and Republicans have varying ideas on many hot button issues. Now, let us see some of those. These are broadly generalized opinions. It must be noted that there are many politicians in each party who have different and more nuanced positions on these issues. Let's look at military. Republicans prefer increasing military spending and have a more hardline stance against countries who are promoting Islamism, jihad, communism, and other totalitarian rules. Democrats prefer cuts to military spending and are more tolerant of Islamism and communism. They are reluctant to use military force to control Islamic fundamentalism and communism. As far as I get concerned, American military might was the primary reason the concept of America was ever placed in my thinking horizon. I came to this country because it was the most powerful nation. Now, why do I support any politics that may weaken its military might? Hell no. America is a good nation, and we want America to remain the unbeatable power on this planet Earth. Now, look at the next one, gun control laws. Democrats favor more gun control laws. Example, they oppose the right to carry concealed weapons in public places. Republicans oppose gun control laws and are strong supporters of the Second Amendment, that is the right to bear arms in the US Constitution, as well as the right to carry concealed weapons. I know this is a very touchy issue for the peace-loving Indian Americans. I can convince you the importance of Second Amendment. We have conducted Zoom sessions in the past to gather support among Indian Americans on this issue. Maybe we can get into some questions on that subject later today. Now, look into the matter of abortions. Democrats support abortion rights and keeping elective abortions legal. Republicans generally believe abortions should not be legal, especially after the baby passed a certain stage of growth. Republicans consider this as a life issue for the child, whereas Democrats consider this as a freedom issue for women. As for me, having a child while still in graduate school and being an international student, I understand the difficulties of unplanned pregnancies. However, being a Catholic from Kerala, we were opposed to the concept of abortion, and my wife is the one who gave me the courage to keep our son even in the middle of extreme difficulties. Life is not always about conveniences and material thought. Every time I look at my son's face, it underlines that value of life. And I'm so happy I consider life, especially my children's life, more important than anything else in this world. Now, look at another issue, LGBTQ rights. Democrats tend to celebrate gay, lesbian, and transgender type aberrations by forming such groups and celebrate with them on the street. Republicans generally consider traditional nuclear families with a father and a mother as the foundation of sustaining a successful society. Republicans also think your sex life as your private matter and nothing special about it to celebrate it on the street and the stages, whether you are straight or gay or trans or anything like that. Such celebrations and activities Republicans consider as not compatible with the modesty and decency of the American society, and maybe encouraging youth to try out crazy ideas that are harmful to the long-term general health and well-being of American society. Now, look at another divisive issue, death penalty. The majority opinion in America about the death penalty is that it should be legal and it should stay. However, many Democrats are opposed to it, and the Democratic Party platform called for abolishing the death penalty. Now look at taxes. Democrats support progressive taxes. That is a system in where high-income individuals pay taxes at a higher rate. This is how federal income tax brackets are currently set up. Republicans support tax cuts for everyone, rich and poor alike. They believe that a smaller government would need lesser revenue from taxes to sustain itself. They consider higher tax rates on the rich is a form of class warfare. Republicans are against punishing success and high achievement. Socialist Democrats who have taken over the control of the Democratic Party hates the rich and want to bring in the living standards of all to the mediocre level. Well, we have seen that such thoughts in action in India before. What is the result? We Indian Americans left the country for greener pastures. Now, tell me with any logic that you can think of, why I should support the same policies that we ran away from. Minimum wage, another issue. Democrats favor steep increase in the minimum wage to help workers. Republicans oppose raising the minimum wage because it hurts businesses. As Indian Americans, we are heavily small business owners. Do we want government to tell us what our employees are worth? We know how to keep the good ones and how to get rid of the bad ones. That is why we came to America, and that is why we must vote based on such practical wisdom we have. Let us not listen to our children because they have not seen any of this, but we have. Now, look at foreign policy. US foreign policy has traditionally been relatively consistent between Democratic and Republican administrations. Key allies have always been other Western powers like the UK, France, Germany, and Japan. America has been consistently unfriendly with communist, socialist regimes. America's allies in the Middle East were and continue to remain countries like Israel, Saudi Arabia, and Bahrain. Obama administration changed all of that by going out of the way to have a deal with Iran, even by antagonizing Israel. Also, he relaxed travel restrictions and unfroze relations with communist Cuba. Bush took us to war for no reason to benefit his cronies and war machinery and enterprise. US always equated India to Pakistan, more so under democratic presidents, a fundamentalistic mistake from what I can see. Of course, it started with India's strong relations to Soviet communist and socialist policies. President Trump corrected all those mistakes in just 3 years. I would like to remind you that Trump was totally against Bush's Iraq war. He even welcomed Obama's first term due to his position on Iraq. He distanced himself from the Chinese dependence and decided to put a stop to China's rise. So, as far as I am concerned, Republican foreign policy under Trump is everything that Indian Americans wanted to see for an awfully long time. Then why not just vote to continue that newfound sanity in the US State Department? It is simply a no-brainer for me. Now, look at undocumented immigrants. The Democratic Party has become extremely sympathetic to illegal immigrants. All of their presidential candidates, including Kamala Harris, wanted to give free health care to illegals when millions of US citizens don't go to hospital due to lack of insurance. Insanity at its worst is all I can say. When it comes to DACA, I want you to understand that Obama himself had indicated earlier to him announcing that the program, he didn't have the legal authority to do that program by an executive order. What Trump tried was to just correct that illegal act and demanded the bill to come from Congress that he can sign it. He is not against common sense based approach to fixing that problem. The do nothing Congress of Pelosi is trying to play politics with it, and that is the problem. Now look at legal immigration. Republicans favor legal immigration to be merit-based and points-based. Such systems are used by countries like Canada and Australia to allow lawful entry visa to individuals with in-demand skills who can contribute to the economy. When it comes to backlog of Indian Americans on the green card waiting list, Democratic Senator Dick Durbin was the single roadblock for so many years. He simply does not want to give Trump a victory and a chance to seek out Indian American support. So in a nutshell, we Indian Americans who mostly are in the country legally are to benefit from the Republican policy of keeping legal and illegal immigration separate and for promoting more merit-based immigration. Yet again, it is simply a no-brainer for us to be on the side of Republicans in this election. Now, look at civil rights issues. As I told earlier, Abraham Lincoln belonged to the Republican Party. So the roots of the Republican Party lie in individual freedom and the abolition of slavery. Indeed, 82% of Republicans in the US Senate voted in favor of the Civil Rights Act in 1964, while only 69% of Democrats did the same thing. The southern wing of the Democratic Party was vehemently opposed to civil rights legislation. The final vote in the Senate for the Civil Rights Bill in 1964 was 73 to 27, with 27 out of 33 Republicans voting in support. So in proportional terms, the Republicans supported this bill much more than the Democrats did in both houses, though the president at that time was a Democrat. A few weeks after Lyndon Johnson signed that bill into law, the Republicans nominated Barry Goldwater for president, a Republican who had voted against civil rights bill. Republicans believed that Goldwater's particular position in 1964 was misleading. He has supported previous attempts at passing Civil Rights Act and desegregation, but did not like the 1964 Act specifically because he felt it infringed on states' rights. However, the damage has been done, and so Republicans lost their claim to that legacy, and Democrats cleverly exploited that situation to illegitimately claiming the full credit for the Civil Rights Bill, despite their abysmally dismal voting record on it. The present dynamic is that minorities like Hispanics and African Americans are much more likely to vote Democrat than Republican. However, there are prominent African American Republicans like Senator Tim Scott, Secretary Dr. Carson, Condoleezza Rice, Herman Cain, who just passed away recently, Clarence Thomas, Michael Steele, and Alan West, as well as Hispanic leaders like Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, Alberto Gonzalez, and Brian Sandoval, with the solid actions that helped the minority communities, such as criminal justice reform, permanent funding of historically black colleges and universities, opportunity zones by Senator Tim Scott, and lowest black unemployment in the history of the country, President Trump is slowly eating into the Democratic support among the minority groups. Last time, he got only 6% of the African American vote. If it doubles that to 12% or more, situation changes dramatically. If he can get about 15% support, which may predict is a real possibility, Trump 2020 is a done deal. Now, look at another issue that you hear a lot: voter ID laws and the irregularities in mail-in voting. Republicans believe these laws are necessary to prevent voter fraud, while Democrats claim that voter fraud is virtually non-existent and that these laws disenfranchise black and Hispanic voters who tend to be poor and unable to obtain ID cards. However, statistics clearly shows that voter fraud exists and is increasing. So it is imperative Republicans continue to insist for voter IDs and transparency in the voting process. Now, Black Lives Matter, or BLM, is in big news these days. The Black Lives Matter movement is mostly Democratic Party, while Republicans have expressed more concern about the shootings and police officers. The 2016 Republican convention featured people killed at the hands of undocumented immigrants, as well as sheriff proclaiming Blue Lives Matter. The Democratic Convention, on the other hand, provided a forum for testimonials from the mothers of black men and women killed in confrontation with the police. I have heard time and again from my friends and who personally experienced the decency and professionalism of American police compared to the arrogant and corruption of the police we have seen in India. Security, active police presence, and 911 at our fingertips are the most important aspects of American life that is attractive to the Indian Americans, especially our women. The security they feel, irrespective of the time of the day, to move around is what women uses all the time to convince their husbands against relocating back to India. Democrats everywhere are trying their best to defend the police, meaning the security we have and we feel currently. What in the world then an Indian American can vote for that party? Yet again, it is simply a no-brainer for Indian Americans to be on the side of Republicans in the upcoming elections. Now, to summarize before I conclude, there is no administration in the past that has accomplished so much just in 3.5 years. I am excited about the prospect of President Trump winning big in November, to ensure that the foundation of the great American comeback is cast in unshakable confidence in our Constitution and enduring fundamentals of economic freedom. He is the best qualified and the only one with the guts, the staying power, and the most willingness to deal with a deceptive, totalitarian, and communist China, Islamic terrorism, and other global threats. It is very essential for us to give him 4 more years to complete the Washington swamp cleanup that is well underway. I came to this country because this country was the best, the number one, the most powerful, the leader of the world. None of us came here for 2 or 3 decades of American dream. I will do anything in my capacity to ensure that America stays the same for the rest of my life, for my kids and their kids. I would really like to help in the process, and that is why I am into politics. Once again, thank you all for listening, and together let us help President Trump and the Republican Party to keep America the way we found her. In fact, let us go one step further. Let us help make America greater than we found it. We owe it to this magnificent nation and the nation that who made us who we are. God bless America. Thank you.